Good morning, everyone.
No, no, let me let people in. Hold on,
I
sorry.
thought you had done that. Sorry.
All right, I just let people in, so give it 30 seconds.
Yep. Good morning, everybody. My name's Jordan Sheff. I'm the Commissioner at the Department of Developmental Services. We have about 100 people joining us this morning in what is the final one of our spring run of these virtual forums. They've been quite exciting. Good news is if you missed the prior ones, they'll be available by video link at our website. So I hope you enjoy today's presentation and take the time to watch some of the others. This is an opportunity for DDS to sort of reframe the work we've been talking about for the last year. You've heard some different terms, potentially like ARPA, the America Rescue Plan Act, or moving on is sort of our early branding of the work we're doing to transform the system. But we're here today to talk and do some rebranding around STEP, the Supporting Transformation to Empower People. And this is a really once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for DDS and for the system. For people with intellectual disabilities to really use an infusion of dollars from the federal government earned by states during the worst of the COVID days, and do some things, allows for some flexibility, allows for a number of things within the way we work with the federal government that we hope will allow us to expand our continuum of supports. Just to, real quickly, we're going to talk a lot today about residential, and we're going to talk about a lot of things that aren't maybe what you're used to. This is not about us eliminating the need for group homes in the state of Connecticut or getting rid of any of our services, frankly. It's about filling in the gaps and working towards a system that is much more person-centered, that starts with a plan for an individual, and that drives the support structure, as opposed to showing you a limited number of menu options when you are eligible and funded for services, and you have to pick from a very short list. This, we hope, will change that and change the conversation and change that dynamic. I have to share with you that I'm going to leave the call for a good portion of time this morning. As many of you may be aware, there's an ongoing strike by 1199 at 6 of our providers. And while this is really important work for us, both short and long term, my presence is needed there, and I'm sure you'll understand. As quickly as I can get back, I will, but I'll leave you in the trusted hands of a Deputy Commissioner, a number of staff, and hopefully I'm back in time for all the questions and answers. So with that, thanks again for joining our Supporting Transformation to Empower People virtual presentation on residential supports. And without further ado, our Deputy Commissioner, Elisa Velardo.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good morning, everyone. I'm Elisa Velardo, Deputy Commissioner for DDS, and it's great to see everyone here this morning. I'll give you a little bit of background in terms of how we've gotten to where we are at this point. Over the last year plus, we've been working with various stakeholders, including individuals, family members, DDS staff, provider staff, to develop the plan that the Commissioner just highlighted, STEP, Supporting Transformation to Empower People. And this is the plan on how we will use federal funds to produce more opportunities within our DDS system. We're focused on enhancing and highlighting our services that promote choice, independence, and integration. So I'm going to encourage you to take that next step and work with your support teams to find meaningful opportunities for greater independence in your lives, whether that's where you work or live. Next slide, please. So this is one of many forums that took place throughout the month of May. In addition to today's forum on residential options, and we'll highlight community companion homes, supportive housing, and individualized home supports, also known as IHS. We've also had other forums that have highlighted core supports, including self-direction, assistive technology, remote supports, and employment. Next slide, please. Our vision for STEP ensures that you and your loved ones will feel empowered, valued, and respected. We want to make sure everyone has the opportunity to be as independent as possible and really participate fully in the community of their choice. I also want to highlight some of the things that we have done and some upcoming events that we're looking forward to in the months ahead. Next slide, please. I want to guide you to our website. It's a great resource for the newest information on STEP or any of the associated initiatives. So we are making additions to our website on a daily basis. There's constantly new information added, and so really frequently visit the website to get the latest news. We also are just about to release STEP videos that highlight the various services that I mentioned, those services that are being focused on. Those videos will be released shortly. They're just beautiful. I've seen the previews. And there will also be one-page information sheets on how to get started with each of those 7 highlighted services. And we're gonna put in the chat one-page info sheet on STEP. Hopefully, you've received our STEP newsletter in the mail, and that contains information and updates about the 7 services we're highlighting and upcoming events. Our newest newsletter will be going out next week, so you can expect to receive one shortly. And if you haven't gotten one in the mail, the newsletter is also available on our website if you've not received it. Which would be, if you haven't received it, it would be a great reason to sign up for our email distributions. So we're going to put a link in the chat for email updates. We are hoping to communicate more and more via email. And so throughout these forums, I think we've had over 600 people sign up for email updates, and we encourage you to do that. We will also be hosting regional forums in the upcoming months to continue these conversations with regional directors on a regional level. So I want to encourage you to reach out to your case manager, access the helpline, and ask about how these highlighted options might fit within your individualized plan. I want to challenge those of you who are in attendance today, and we're so excited to see such a large crowd, that if you know of somebody who wanted to attend and was not able to attend, that you share the information that you've gained here. When we've had focus groups, we've heard loud and clear that some of the most trusted sources of information are family and friends. So really pass this information along. So let's get started with the rest of the forum. Next slide, please. Today, our topic is residential services. DDS residential services provide individuals with supports needed to meet their individual goals and to live as independently as possible. We will be sharing information about our community companion home program, our supportive housing options, and individualized home supports. We have several presenters today that will provide a lot of information and also share some stories. There will be the PowerPoint slides that accompany our presentation, and these materials will be shared with you after today's presentations in the event that you want to take a closer look at the PowerPoint. It'll also be available on our website. As we move through the presentation, we will hold all questions of our staff and presenters until the end. But if you have a question, feel free to jot it in the chat, and we will get to all questions at the end of the presentations. So I think we mentioned that today's forum is recorded. The recording will also be available on our website and also on our social media pages. At the end of the forum, we'll have a brief poll to get some feedback from you in terms of the value of the forum, and then we'll turn it over to question and answers. At this point, I'm going to introduce Dave Piggott, our Assistant CCH Manager for the North Region, who is going to provide an overview on the Community Companion Home Program. Next slide.
Thank you, Deputy Commissioner, and good morning, everybody. Very happy to be here this morning to discuss the CCH program with everybody. Next slide. So what is a community companion home or a CCH? The one that we really like about the program is it's a home. It's about individuals opening up their home to become licensed and bringing in an individual and supporting them in their home and making them part of their family, which is real different from some of our other congregate settings. So when we talk about CCH, we really put a lot of focus on the fact that this really is a home. Next slide, please. In a CCH, again, we work with individuals, we license the home. So DDS licenses to people that provide care and services in their home to adults or children with intellectual disabilities. CCH is licensed by DDS to make sure that the health and safety and social needs of the individual are met. A matching process is used to ensure a successful placement. CCH home can be supported by a team comprised of a case manager, compliance coordinator, nurse, behaviorist, all to ensure a successful placement. So within a CCH, it's really a two-part process. The first part is we work with an individual to get their home licensed. As we're going through the licensing process, we're developing a home study and kind of developing a snapshot of the type of person that they would like to open their home to, type of person they think they could best support. Once the person is then licensed, we then work with that individual that when referrals come up, we forward them referrals. And that's what we refer to as the matching process. Next slide, please. Why a CCH? This is a model that's been very successful in other states. In Connecticut, the length of placement is close to, it averages around to be 10 years. And I think the longest placement we have is 36 years. But it's about becoming part of a family. We have a number of cases in which licensees started out as a mom or dad was the licensee. And then as the mom or dad, got older, some of their natural children have just taken over. We have a number of instances in which when the parent was no longer able to successfully, meet the requirements of being a licensee, one of their natural children would step in. And without fail, whenever we talk to them about, why doing this, they said that it's, in their opinion, it's taking care of their brother or sister, that essentially they were raised together, that they view the individuals that had been placed in their home really as siblings. And that's exactly what we're shooting for in a CCH. We're shooting for a family to open up not only their house, but make it the home and to embrace somebody as a part of their family. Next slide, please. How do I become a CCH home? It's really not that complicated of a process. It is, you would reach out to one of the regions, and again, you can find all the contact information on the DDS website. There's training that is involved. There's some background checks that are involved. The background checks that we do for a CCH are essentially the same background checks that are required for any employee. We do local checks with local police. We do checks with the state police. We do verifications through the abuse and neglect registry. And we also get outside references. We will also have the ability to, we can, verify employment. We also provide a lot of training to licensees to make sure that they understand what would be expected as a provider. And we just work collaboratively and closely with them. We put a lot of focus on the fact that it's a team, that from the moment we get that contact that somebody is interested in becoming a CCH provider, they become part of a team, and they get to know the different team members. They get to know the coordinator that would be in the home, and they get to meet the nurse who would be doing some nursing training. throughout the process. So they kind of, become a part of the team almost from day one. Next slide, please. Again, the core elements of a CCH. The initial CCH application process is kind of what I just detailed. I will say this, we often get calls saying, can somebody send me a CCH application? There is no paper application. It's not like you go and you apply for a job. It really is an application process. It involves time spent getting to know the individual. We gather information through that. Applicants do need to provide proof that they're in good health. Like I mentioned previously, we do the background checks. Through the course of the process, we develop a home study, which gives us a really clear picture about the type of home that they have, as well as the type of person they would like to, bring into their family. The home itself must comply with what is called the FSIR. It's a comprehensive fire safety checklist. We verify that there are working smoke detectors in the home, that the furnace is in good condition, water temperature in the home is not excessive, that we also make sure that, windows in the home are not, don't exceed a certain height. Any stairs in the home have a handrail for safety. It really is a comprehensive checklist to ensure that the home itself is safe. And before we would license the home or even get to the point where we're asking licensing to come out, we go through kind of a punch list, just double checking, making sure that, it's a safe home for everybody. And then again, once all of that is done, somebody from our licensing department goes out. Again, an objective party go out, they'll again review all of the paperwork, all the documentation, and they'll do an on-site inspection. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, training to become a licensee. You can go to the next slide. So we provide training on abuse and neglect prevention, reporting, program development, interacting with the families, respectful language. We also require all CCH licensees are CPR certified. They're also trained in first aid, infection control, medical and emergency procedures, as well as we've been putting a lot of emphasis on the positive behavioral supports. And then once an individual is placed in the home, we do individualized or individual specific training depending on the needs of that person. And again, it's the training it's an ongoing thing. There's initial trainings that are required to be licensed, but we kind of view training as an ongoing thing, really, and an investment in the success of the CCH. Next slide, please. Responsibilities of the CCH. If you can go to the next slide. So, all right, I'm sorry, I got a little bit too ahead of myself. So responsibilities of the CCH. Responsibilities primarily include, the primary responsibility is providing a loving home for an individual. There are some paperwork responsibilities as far as documentation of finances and medical appointments and things like that. We actually, quite honestly, we try to keep the paperwork to a minimum because this is not a CLA or a group home, and we don't want it to become one. This is an individual's home, and it's a private home. So we try to keep the paperwork to a minimum. We're also doing a lot more with electronic medical records now, working closely with our licensing division to make sure that that's acceptable. Because again, like I say, we do not want to turn CCHs into little group homes. We just want it to be a regular family home. We're in the home on a monthly basis. The staff person who we refer to as the tech is in the home on a monthly basis. It's providing oversight of the finances, assisting licensees with becoming a representative payee for the Social Security entitlements, ensuring that money is being spent appropriately. We also assist with, redeterminations, rep payee reports, and really just being there to support the family and any questions that they may have. We have, as part of the support team, is also a nurse. The minimum requirement for a nurse is that they're in a CCH at least once a quarter. I stress here that that's the minimum. If somebody is going through some challenging stuff medically, we can have the nurse in the home several times a week if that's what is necessary. We'll dedicate whatever resources we need to ensure that the licensee is supported properly and that the individual gets the support they need. And we can do this because most in a CCH could be licensed up to 3 individuals. In this day and age, we're really trying to like not go more than like 2 individuals, because again, we do not want to make these little mini group homes. But because they're relatively small numbers, we're able to give more of this personalized attention. As far as the matching, like we talked about, that as we're going through the licensing process, we're developing a home study where we're finding out about the individual and about the type of person they would like to open their home to. Once the home is licensed, a referral comes in. What we will generally do is we will send it out to all of the vacant licensees, both in the public and the private sector. We'll ask individuals, take a look at the referral packet, and do you think this is a match? If it is, generally the first step is we call it a meet and greet. It's literally getting together, just have a conversation, maybe have a cup of coffee, but it gives the individual an opportunity to see the home, see the potential bedroom, see the neighborhood, meet all the family members, see the makeup of the home. And that initial meet and greet can be a bit overwhelming at times, because usually it's the individual, it's either, their some of their current support team, maybe it's their parent or their guardian, plus it's the family members of the CCH. So it can be a bit overwhelming at times. After that first visit, if both parties seem to be interested, the next step would be kind of a more scaled back. Maybe it would be a dinner visit. And then after that, if that goes well, maybe it would be a weekend visit. And again, the matching is an ongoing process, and the transition is an ongoing process as well. We really do look at taking our time with the matching and the visits really as an investment, because if we take the time to do the transition properly, the data has proven out that the placement is much more prone for long-term success. And then ultimately, the final decision, it's a mutual decision. It's made by the individual and their family and their guardian and the licensee. Again, so it's very, very different than other congregate settings where unfortunately, too often individuals don't have a lot of say in terms of where the placement occurs. In a CCH, it's mutual. It's up to the individual. I mean, we've had placements that after one visit, individuals have said, yeah, this is where I want to go. This is my forever home. We've had other cases in which, after several visits, it's just, for whatever reason, they just decide, you know what, I just don't think I can do it. And that's fine. We really don't want to rush to decisions because, again, we look at this as we're looking for long-term success. So if we do the transition properly, I think we're in better shape there. Next slide, please. The role of the individual's family is key. The CCH, whereas we want an individual to become a part of the CCH family, it is not taking the place of the individual's family. We want the individual's family to be as involved as they want to be, and they can be. And as we're going through the licensing process with a CCH, we stress that if the individual has active family members, are they going to be open to that person remaining in their lives and remaining active? And absolutely. Again, family members, they're able to attend, any and all meetings regarding the individual, if it's what the individual would like. They can also, they can be the respite for the CCH if they like. So CCH is not taking the place of the natural family. It's just like an additional family, but again, we really want this to be successful for the individual. And we understand that, the individual's family is critical. Next slide, please. Under the roles of the case manager, everybody in a CCH is assigned a case manager. Case managers are responsible for meeting with the individuals, again, on a minimum of a quarterly basis. They also will facilitate the IP meeting and then the quarterly review. In the CCH world, we do have the luxury of after a year, if somebody is stable, The quarterly review can go to a 6-month review. But again, that's if the person's stable. And even in cases where we've gone to 6-month reviews, if there becomes some sort of life event that warrants the team look at things more closely or more frequently, we can always revert back to a quarterly basis. And in all reality, we can meet as often as necessary for the person to be supported. CCHs are supported by both public and private staff. The frequency of the visits and the type of visits are the same, so there's a uniformity there. It's the same expectation whether it is a CCH that is supported by DDS or it's by a private provider agency. Like I mentioned, each home has nursing care coordination and behavioral or clinical supports as necessary. Like I say, it's whatever the individual needs, we will be there and we'll meet that need. We want to give the individuals the support they need, but we don't want to over support them either. Again, our focus is on, we want to maximize people's abilities. Hopefully they can learn, and develop a new skill set that over time we can actually fade out some of the supports, but whatever they need, we'll be there to provide it for them. Next slide, please. Again, next steps. If you're interested, please, any questions at all, if you go to the DDS website, you can find out all the contact information for the CCH coordinators in the region. Please feel free to reach out to your case manager, and always to the DDS helpline is always there to help answer any of your questions. Next slide. I guess that's it for me. Thank everybody, and I'll be on. I did see questions pop up in the chat, and I think we're going to hold all of those till the end, and I'll be happy to answer any of those questions at the end.
Thanks so much, Dave. At this point, I would love to introduce Elba Caraballo. Elba, are you there?
I am.
Welcome. Elba is our new Director of Housing. This marks her 1-week anniversary. And so she will not be presenting today, but I did want to have the opportunity to introduce her, actually have you introduce yourself, as Elba will be coordinating across the state around housing issues. So welcome, Elba.
Thank you so much. It is really a pleasure to get to talk to you all. I don't want to hide the fact that I'm on a huge learning curve, but I'm very excited about being part of the DDS team, supporting you as you support your family members. It is certainly an honor to be able to be part of this team. The focus is very challenging and very rewarding, and I hope to be speaking with you in one of these forums or at a community meeting or whatever forum works best for you based on your areas and your regions. And so again, it's a pleasure to meet you, and I look forward to working with you.
Thank you so much. Next slide, please. So I introduced Elba as at that time because our next topic is supportive housing, and that's going to be an area, it's an area that's already growing rapidly and an area that Elba will be very involved in. So next, I would like to introduce Josh Scalora, that's going to talk a little bit about supportive housing in Connecticut.
Thank you so much, Deputy Commissioner Velardo, and welcome Elba Caraballo. We're so happy to have you here with us. I'm going to speak a little bit about supportive housing. Next slide, please. The type of supportive housing I'm talking about is supportive housing that you think of when you think of an apartment complex. And specifically to start, we're going to talk about new buildings or new construction apartment complexes. It's a type of supportive housing that DDS had very minimal involvement in before 2017. Some of our providers may have had involvement through HUD or another organization with some housing development of that manner, but we hadn't really been involved in it from the ground up. And we were pulled into that from the ground up involvement by this IDASH program. That was a really wonderful opportunity for us to explore how that worked, how supportive housing development worked. And we had a lot to learn at that time. We are still learning. But we were given $20 million from the legislature. And we worked with the Department of Housing and Connecticut Housing Finance Authority, also known as CHFA. They administer several different housing projects and development award projects. And they were able to guide us to release a funding of notice, a notice of funding availability, also called the NOFA. And we released that. There were 3 projects that came in where developers for new housing developments partnered with a DDS provider to propose inclusion of units within the larger development for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities supported by DDS. And out of that, there were 3 developments, as I said, and we're going to take a look at that information in another slide. After that, we wanted to continue the growth that we had started and the successes that we had seen. However, we didn't have new money from the legislature, and Department of Housing and CHFA talked with us about including us in the supportive housing guideline for low-income housing tax credit. And that allowed DDS to be part of a community of other health and human services providers, such as Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services, or Department of Children and Families, who at times are able to commit to a service-enriched units within these developments. And the low-income housing tax credit process is an existing process in which the state of Connecticut incentivizes the development of affordable housing. And within that program, applicants can get extra points for including supportive units. So we became one of those agencies that can commit to providing rental assistance to supportive units. And in that time frame of 2019 until 2022, in which we were evolving to use an existing system, we were able to get 4 more developments awarded. And in the intervening time, which is really current time, we're working towards sustainability, keeping up that momentum and trying to have a regular infusion of new units through that tax credit award process every single year. So this year, there were an additional 4 developments awarded. And what's new this year, as part of our innovation, we have released a notice of opportunity for non-project-based supportive housing. And what does that mean and how is it different? The first things I talked to you about were new developments when they were really breaking ground and building something from the ground up. This is where there's existing apartment complexes and developments, and we're looking to start with a smaller footprint and maybe expand up to as many as 25% of the total number of individuals. We're starting very small, supporting, up to 4 people in these new proposals, but it's a wonderful way to see housing development, be able to be utilized for the existing stock as well, because we know we have a limited amount of new housing being built. So if we can reuse what's already there, more the better. And that's how we're looking at the future and looking at all options. Let's take a look at where we've had some supportive housing development. Next slide. So I hope you can see this map, and there's some circles on it, and those are color coded. And the yellow circles are things that have already been awarded, and they've also been built, and they're inhabited with people living in there happily. So we have 5 of those that you can see, and those are scattered throughout the central part of the state. And if you look at the legend on the right, you can see that there's an additional 6 blue circles, and you can see those actually, I think where I counted, I'm having a little mismatch here on the count, but what we can see is on the map, we see the blue circles representing things that are newly awarded. And this map is updated on our website, and we'll make sure that we communicate with you about how to find that. And this shows that we do have housing development spread throughout the state in various locations. And we'd like to see it in more places throughout the state, including the West region, the western part of the state. We'd really like to see more housing development in that area. And then, of course, in the, I just saw in the chat, the east of the river, in that area, we have lots of opportunity for more development in those areas as well. And DDS has not been in control of where developers choose to build these developments, but we do have the ability to engage with those developers and seek approval for developments in specific areas. We have not been able to utilize a system yet where we target development in specific areas, but we're talking with Department of Housing about that. And that's an exciting new thing that could be an opportunity for us. Next slide, please. The goals of the supportive housing projects are to expand access to integrated and affordable supportive housing, and to really strengthen and build linkages between housing developers and service providers. And I guess the unstated middle person is the property management company. So really creating these strong linkages between the people that develop and own and manage and the providers who are supporting individuals in those settings has been a wonderful partnership that we've seen flourish and lead to some results that surprised us in terms of the ways that those developers are accommodating and really going above and beyond to provide access and provide the things that people will need in that setting. We want to demonstrate the effectiveness of smart home and other assistive technologies. And you're going to hear a little bit about some of those, and I'm sure that you've been following that, but some of the cooking aid tools and some of the things to help people monitor their health or medication and environmental controls. The list goes on, and people are really benefiting from it in these settings. And we've used the development in these settings to promote that. And we want to support the move from institutional care models to living as full members of an integrated community. Next slide, please. What people supported by DDS need and want is pretty much what everybody wants. They want safe and affordable housing. If they need help, they want to be able to get access to that help when and if they need it. Access to transportation to be able to get where you want to go when you want to go there. That might be out in the community to shop or visit with friends, or it might be going to work. There's a desire when you live in a shared use setting, like an apartment building or complex, to have some community space where you can organize parties, get together with friends, take classes, do cooking classes or exercise or all sorts of different things that will create a vibrant community, which leads to really the inclusion and participation at the level that people choose. People want accessible or accessible ready living environments where they can stay if their needs change, and again, access to assistive technology to give enhanced choice and freedom of control. Next slide, please. The key elements that we've found lead to successful developments is at or under 25% of the total units in a larger development are for supportive housing. There's a person-centered living environment that feels like it's driven by the individuals who live there and not by their staff. There's an economy of scale, meaning the staffing is able to serve more people with less movement from location to location. They can support people doing group activities, and there's a lot of opportunity to get the right amount of staffing without overstaffing. Having on-site staffing available and giving people a continuum of supports as their needs change is a very, very helpful thing to give people the confidence to take the step to live independently like this with supports. And thinking about the ability to age or change in place as we all go through changes. Some are less permanent than others, and we don't want to have a new home or have to get displaced if we have changes. So the ability to have that type of support and access is a very important component. And again, just that strong provider-developer relationship to work through any bumps in the road that people might experience and really build a strong multi-year partnership that will last and maybe even grow into other developments and partnerships. Next slide, please. Research has shown that there are improved health and medical outcomes for people that receive Housing Plus supports, including reduced hospital stays, reduced emergency room visits, and reduced days in nursing homes. And that makes a lot of sense because people with stable Housing Plus supports really have a lot of their life needs met and have the ability to get the help they need to have those other life needs met, whether they be medical or other. They can have support in making daily decisions by having available staffing and having a large network of friends and co-residents with which to confer as well when making decisions and group decisions. People can really determine how to best use their staff time because they have freed up some of that time through enhanced use of assistive technology, perhaps to manage medication or help with cooking. And instead of having to have staff there for specific things, they can choose how they want to use that valuable time and really utilize technology to increase independence and give people more choices. People tend to get a very strong sense of community and belonging when they are making those choices and living that self-determined life. And they have the supports that they need. And one of the greatest benefits is having a home of your own where you can host family and friends for a visit and start to have gatherings of your own in your own home. Next slide, please. If people are interested in finding out more, they can talk to their case manager. And if they don't have an assigned case manager, can call the DDS helpline. DDS staff can also utilize the same resources that we're utilizing for all of our stakeholder groups, which is using our DDS website, also learning as much as we can about the STEP initiative, and specifically shining a light on the Fourth Tuesday forums on innovative options. That video series is available for streaming, and there are a few specific topics I'd like to call out: the residential transformation and ARPA technology for optimal independence, and advances in supportive housing, and more. And I would like to say that this is a really important part of our evolution of our housing support models and what we're able to offer people. We responded to what people were asking for in focusing on developing this type of supportive housing. But again, it's part of this great suite of options that people are getting to be able to make more choices about how they want to live their life. Right now, we don't have the amount of supply that we would like to have to meet all of the demand that there will be for this type of housing. But as you can see, we're working to expand the availability. So thank you all so much for your time. I look forward to hearing more and remaining on for the rest of this call. And I believe that we're joined by guest Michael Maynard from LARC, or the ARC of Litchfield County, who is one of the providers who worked with a developer, Penrose, in the Torrington Riverfront property development, and has some great success stories and can talk about the trials and tribulations of doing supportive housing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Josh. I have to say I missed some of your slides on the presentation the other night, but shout out, because usually there's a disconnect between what's going on the ground and the ideal model as put forward. But as I was going through the slides with you, it's either we're doing everything on your slides or we aspire to be doing everything on your slides. So there's a beautiful connection between the ideals and the goals of this supportive housing model and what we're trying to do on the ground here. Also a shout out to Elba. I heard her say challenging and rewarding. I love that line. I often say that the riverfront for us here at LARC has been a labor of love. It's been a lot of work. It's been a full team on board effort for us. We've worked really closely with our partners in the West region and in central office. We've had extraordinary support from other providers, Pam Fields and the folks at Midstate helping us with assistive technology. So we're very excited about what's going on there. And it's very much, we always talk about this as a hybrid model. It's the middle ground between a full-on CLA CRS, which for the individuals who moved into Riverfront, that's not what they needed. But they needed more than just typical IHS supports. They needed a little bit more structure and a little bit more support from us. So that's where we are. In terms of structure, Riverfront opened last August. It's a 60-unit building, 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments, and there are 12 one-bedroom apartments occupied by individuals we support here at LARC. We have on site 365 days a year an overnight staff member who is there in case of emergencies or for other needs, and also does some administrative work during those hours. So that's been an important part of the model. I'd like to talk a little bit today about 2 of our success stories. Stephen, who he's in his late 30s. He's been part of LARC for any number of years here. He was in our vocational program in a number of different settings. We could never quite get to the point where Stephen seemed like he was happy with what he was doing. I mean, the supports we provided him were serviceable, but it didn't seem like he was leading his best life. At some point late in the game, we encouraged Stephen to join our new at the time Project Search program, which is another innovative program that DDS has been rolling out statewide. We're honored to be part of that as well. That's a 9-month cohort program where young people are in a professional setting. We use Charlotte Hungerford Hospital here. They go through a 9-month curriculum. They do job rotation. They learn a lot about personal skills and professional skills. The fact that they're embedded in a professional setting allows them to gain some comfort with being in the business community. Stephen really excelled. He did a wonderful job in Project Search. And then his family felt like he probably would be home with them forever. And then Riverfront came along. And we thought Stephen would be a good fit. Our partners at DDS and the Pratt team as well, and our clinical team felt as well that he would. His family finally thought he would be a good fit. And he has just shown in ways. We started off, we had to bring him to work. He has a job right now at Thomaston Town Hall where they love him dearly. But now he takes public transportation to and from. I said the other day that his colleagues at Thomaston held a shower for him, like a housewarming shower to help buy him things he needed for his apartment. And the transformation in Stephen, this project has just been life-changing. I mean, he's so proud of what he's accomplished. He's proud of his home. He's proud of his life. He's proud that he gets to work back and forth. One of the complexities of this model for my team here is that the supports you provide in month 1 aren't going to be the supports you provide in month 3, especially if you're doing a good job, because you try to give folks the skills to actually be more fully independent. So we were doing a lot of transportation. Now we don't. We get a lot of support on the transportation front from our colleagues down at the Kennedy Collective in Trumbull. They have a program where they come out and help you and support individuals to negotiate public transportation. We were grateful to them for that support. That's proven to be really beneficial for several of the individuals we support here. And Stephen is just living his best life right now. He hosts his family once a week at his home. True to Josh's comments earlier, there's a community room here at Riverfront. There is a small exercise room. There's an outside playground. It's right along the river. There's a walking path. So Stephen certainly is just thriving, and it's wonderful to see him so happy and so proud. And we're really honored to be part of that success with him. The other individual I'd like to talk about is Aaron, who's in his mid to late 20s. Aaron came through our school to community transition program when we ran one on behalf of Torrington Public Schools. We no longer run that. Those programs come and go depending on the needs of the school district. Aaron also participated in Project Search, although in a different cohort than Stephen. And when I first met Aaron, he was a bit unfocused, but focused like a laser beam on his love of music. He doesn't do music for a living right now. I think that he would love to, but he works at a very fancy assisted living facility up here in Litchfield County. Again, he uses public transportation. It took a while to get him there. Aaron, I joke, his apartment isn't as tidy as Stephen's. They're very different people and they need different types of support. Aaron tends to require a bit more support on the sort of domestic front than Stephen does. But just recently, I saw Aaron at an event we held at Riverfront a few weeks ago. There is a small community radio station within walking distance, actually, of Riverfront, which is right off of Main Street in Torrington and within walking distance of our main office here. And Aaron is starting to DJ a weekly show on the local radio station. He was thrilled with that. And that just wouldn't have happened. I mean, we have a lot of rural communities surrounding Torrington here, and getting your son or daughter or loved one to anything is not for the faint of heart. Transportation is a real challenge up here. But the fact that he's in close proximity to these amenities downtown, and for all of the 12 individuals, it's proven to be there's just a natural sense of community emerging, not only among the individuals, but among the community. Important to the model is that these units are distributed throughout the building on all 4 floors at both ends and in the middle. So we don't want a LARC wing in the building. We want folks to be truly integrated into the community. One of the concessions that the developers, the Penrose folks, who were wonderful and making modifications to units until like 2 weeks before we moved in, that's how accommodating they were to us. They let our folks move in first because it was a brand new build. And so our individuals got to sort of own the place for a little bit. And then as neighbors moved in, they understood that we were there, and the embrace from the community, the embrace from the neighbors has been nothing short of remarkable. The best thing I hear all the time from my staff who report is that our folks are just folks who live there. And that is what we're all hoping for. We want folks who live there and have lives. And with the supports we provide them, they have really full lives. So it's still a work in progress. There were hiccups along the way. It's not perfect, but it's getting better week by week, week by week. We've had, like I said, extraordinary support from our DDS colleagues, and we could not be more proud of this program. And we've also offered ourselves up, as Elisa knows, with other providers who've done this, to be supports for those coming after us. Anything we've learned, we're willing to share and let people make new mistakes, new shiny mistakes. I always say, don't make our mistakes, make new ones. But in any ways, if we can support this model, it's an extraordinarily wonderful model. And I'm so honored to be part of it and so grateful that DDS is pushing this forward, because it's a real game changer for families. And I think the potential is unlimited. So thank you for letting me share some of our success stories. I hope you get a sense of just how grateful we are to be part of this.
Thank you, Michael. I want to thank you. It was just a couple of days ago that I reached out to Michael to say, hey, we're going to be talking about housing, and supportive housing is one of the topics. And I just want to hear, how folks are doing. And you immediately dropped everything to join us and to share firsthand these success stories. And I couldn't thank you more. I've been to Riverfront, beautiful location, beautiful. Not only are the apartments and the complex itself just gorgeous, but when you talk about location and access to community, just amazing. So thank you for taking the time and sharing those stories.
Happy to be here, Elisa, and thanks for the invite. And I'll stay on as well in case there are any questions I can help with at the end.
Terrific. I do see there are some questions in the chat. Chat is very active, so we have a good group here today. All right, we'll pull up the PowerPoint again. And next I'd like to introduce Brian Reddy. Brian is the Director of Service Development and Support for Individual and Family Support Services in the North region. And Brian is going to share a little bit about individualized home supports, or what is also known as IHS. So welcome, Brian.
Thank you, Deputy Commissioner. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to be providing an overview of individualized home supports and where that support service can be delivered. IHS is a model of support. Next slide, please. So I provided a bit of a framework for the information I'm going to be providing this morning. So I'm first going to talk about what is individualized home support and where this support service can be provided. There are two delivery support options. Number one is using a DDS qualified provider, and the other is using the model of self-direction. I'll be talking about both of those. And then there are some more customized options of using IHS within a clustered support setting and paired with the use of assistive technology. Next slide, please. So let's talk about what is individualized home support and where that support service can be provided. So it can be provided virtually anywhere in a family home, within a person's community, or within an individual's own home. And the goal of the support service is to help individuals acquire, improve, and retain skills so that they can live more independently and work towards achieving personal outcomes as stated in their individual plan. The individual plan is a document that the department uses for every person who receives supports and services through DDS. So some examples of skills that can be built using IHS supports include budgeting and money management, playing a greater role with managing medical needs, and exploring ways to expand circles of friends. My foundation here at DDS is case management. So I've worked over the years with supporting many individuals and families with developing person-centered plans in preparation to receive IHS supports. And so I recently worked with a young woman who has been living independently for many years, but due to some changes in her life, she now needs some support to maintain her independence. So we met as a team and we identified areas where she needed the most support. Those areas included help with getting to and from medical appointments, help with maintaining her apartment, and budgeting. So together we created a weekly schedule of when and where those supports would occur. And one of the benefits of IHS is that those supports are flexible. They can be provided when and where the person needs them. Staffing is intermittent, and the number of hours a person receives is based on the use of the level of need tool, which helps us to determine the number of support hours needed. It's important to note that this is not a 24-hour supported service. Next slide, please. Okay. So there are two delivery options for this support service. Number one, individuals and families, they can choose to use a DDS qualified provider. The department qualifies providers across the state, and a list of those providers can be found on our website. You can type in DDS qualified providers into the search engine, and you will get a list of providers throughout the state. Individuals and families can review that list and reach out to providers that are in and around where the person lives, seeking IHS services. Agencies may have support staff available who are ready and able to start working with an individual. If not, then the agency will need to hire staff, and they do a great job to work to match the staff person's interest, skill set, and personality to the individual seeking the support. The agency and staff also participate in the development of the individual plan, which works towards developing desired personal outcomes. Next slide, please. The second option of support is the model of self-direction. And what is self-direction? It means you can choose to hire your own support staff. You can take control and authority for managing your own supports within your life. You are the boss. You are the employer of your support professional. You develop the supports that you need to live the life that you want. And you take responsibility for exploring all available resources to support the plan that you have for your life. So in the example with the young woman, she decided along with her team to self-hire, and she's going to be using the model of self-direction to hire somebody that she knows and trusts. So we're very excited for her. All right, next slide, please. So the IHS support model can also be used within a clustered setting. Just click that off there. So individuals who receive clustered supports, they typically live in their own home. So this model is not within a family home and is only offered through the use of a DDS qualified provider. So IHS within clustered support settings, they offer opportunities for individuals who may need access to staff so that they're safe for overnight and awake support. So they may not need an in-person support staff, but they may need to be able to access staff during the overnight, and therefore staff are within 1/2 mile from the individuals that they support so that they can be accessible. Other opportunities with clustered supports help people to live more independently in their own home, promoting independence and community social interaction. DDS qualified providers can also be funded to provide in-person support to more than one person at the same time. So it could be a ratio of two individuals in a staff or up to 3 individuals with a staff for the purpose of sharing community and social activities to foster companionship, relationship building, and to engage in preferred community social activities. Next slide, please. So some of these examples include providing direct support during the overnight hours, engaging in shared activities such as grocery shopping, and engaging in preferred recreational activities. So as a case manager, I supported 2 individuals who they rented an apartment in the same apartment complex, and then they shared the same IHS support staff through the DDS qualified provider. The staff went into each apartment, helping each individual work on personal goals such as laundry, medication administration, helping with meal preparation, preparing for the next day, helping them get ready for work. And all of those supports help those folks to maintain their independence in their own apartments. Okay. Next slide, please. IHS and assistive technology, they really go hand in hand. We all use assistive technology in our day-to-day life, and so do the individuals with whom we support. And IHS staff play a vital role in helping people learn and utilize various AT devices. So what is this assistive technology, or AT? Is any item, piece of equipment, software program, or product system that's used to increase, maintain, or improve independence within the individual's home and or community. It also enhances communication, promotes inclusion, and increases an individual's overall independence. AT is person-centered, and an assessment should be conducted to determine recommendations. AT can help individuals feel more secure, confident, and can replace the need for in-person support during a particular period of time. So for example, if an individual who is receiving IHS supports in person because they might need prompting with medication, there are things called medication reminders as an example. They can be used on an app or an actual device that's in the person's apartment, and it can sound an alarm or a buzzer, prompting the person when it's time to take their medication. So the IHS support staff is vital in helping the person learn and understand the device. And the IHS staff can then fade that support as the person is becoming more independent with using the MedMinder, and eventually hopefully fading the in-person support, which doesn't necessarily mean a decrease in support hours, but that means that that in-person support can be provided somewhere else within the person's life during their week to work on a particular skill or activity. All right, next slide, please. So there are various examples of assistive technology, no tech, low tech, or high tech. Some of the low tech options include weighted pencils and silverware. My favorite, Post-it notes or tactile letters. Some of the low tech devices include switches, buzzers, alarms, talking calculator, and communication boards. And as I was talking about the MedMinder, again, it's an example of a low tech device where there's an alarm or a buzzer that alerts the person to take their medication. Also, talking calculator can be helpful with people learning to budget and manage their own money. And then, of course, more high-tech areas such as speech recognition software, wheelchairs, braces, or the commonly used iPad or iPhone. All right, next slide, please. So how can you utilize the IHS model of support? You need to identify as a need through the individual planning process. And I've included a link for more information about the IP. Again, the IP is a document used by the department, and it guides the supports and services for every person receiving services through the department. Have a current level of need assessment, which helps to determine the number of support hours. The level of need is a comprehensive assessment that indicates a person's strengths areas of need and helps us to determine an allocation of hours of support for IHS. And I've included a link there for more information. And lastly, an individual must request and receive through their case manager an allocation of residential funding from the region's Planning Resource Allocation Team, also known as PRAT. I've included a link there for more information on the PRAT committee. There is a PRAT committee in each region, and the committee is made up of a multidisciplinary team, and they review all of the requests for funding to purchase supports and services. Funding awards are based on need, priority, and appropriations within the DDS budget. Next slide, please. So for more information about IHS, you're going to contact your DDS assigned case manager. If you do not have an assigned DDS case manager, each region has a regional helpline in the North, South, and West regions. And I've included the emails for each of those regions, as well as the 800 phone numbers to reach out directly. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian. You provided a lot of information, and I want to remind people that this PowerPoint will be available to you. So the links that Brian referenced, or the phone numbers, all of that you'll have available to you. Next slide, please. Now I'd like to introduce Brian Smith, Assistant Regional Director for the South Region, who's going to talk a little bit about respite. Welcome, Brian. Hello, Brian, are you there?
Good morning. Sorry about that. The good old mute button.
Mute button.
One of us has to do it, right? So good morning, everybody, and thank you, Deputy Commissioner. Welcome, and as Deputy Commissioner mentioned, I'm going to talk to a little bit about respite and the different types of respite services that are available. Next slide, please. So what is respite? Respite is temporary care of a person with a disability for the purpose of offering relief to the family or caregiver. It is a service that allows for time to re-energize, deal with emergency situations, or engage in personal, social, or routine activities and tasks that otherwise may be neglected, postponed, or curtailed due to the demands of caring for a person who has intellectual disabilities. What this definition on this page does not reference is that respite is also an opportunity for the individual with the disability to have a vacation, to respite away from their family or their caregiver. So there's benefits both on the side of the caregiver as well as on the side of the individual who is receiving the respite care. Next slide, please. So what types of respite are available within DDS's system? One is our overnight respite, which is available through our 12 plus DDS respite centers, and I will talk about those later in this slide presentation, which are operated by DDS and staffed by DDS. They do provide 24-hour care for extended weekends and comfortable home-like environments. The other option is overnight and hourly respite, and that is available through either our home and community-based waivers and or through our family grant program, through funding through one of those two mechanisms. Next slide, please. So families who are not enrolled in one of our waivers can apply for a family grant to purchase their own respite services. Each region does have about $1.2 million roughly for grant program funding for disability related services and supports. Those grants, probably about 800,000 or more, are directed towards staffing related supports, respite being one of them. So there's a very high use and requests coming in from families for family grants for this type of service. Okay. The other idea is we can also have the use of our family support workers. Each of the three regions do have a team of family support workers on referral who can also provide respite, access to community activities, transportation to medical appointments, transportation to our respite centers. So there's a host of different referral activities that you can tap into through that referral process using your helpline case manager or assigned case manager, utilizing our family support worker services as well. Now, if you do have funding through our home and community-based waiver program, You can also request additional funds or manipulation of the current funds to incorporate respite into that service plan. So if you do have residential dollars, your case manager, and you can work with them on whether or not how you can carve out some of those residential dollars and direct it towards respite services specifically. Okay. I did put the link on there about self-determination. We'll bring you right to the website, as well as our qualified provider list. When you're self-directing, you're often finding that person to provide that service. And that could be through waiver dollars, that can be through family grant dollars. But often families might be in an area where they might not have extended family support, they might not have extended community connections or faith-based organization connections, and trying to find an appropriate respite provider to support your loved one or the person you're caring for can be cumbersome. So our qualified provider list also is another option to where you can look to see who in your community, as through one of our providers, is offering the respite services. Next slide, please. Now, how do you access respite? So if you're looking for a family grant, or if you're looking to talk to your assigned case manager about additional resources for respite services, your case manager would be your point of contact. If you do not have a case manager assigned to you, then you would contact the regional helpline. And I believe Mr. Reddy, prior to my presentation, had those contacts right in one of his slides. They would become your point of contact at that point. The case manager or the helpline contact would be the person who would sit down, chat with you over the phone, virtual meeting, in person, whatever format that might look like, and complete any of the referral documents or request documents. If you're looking for the family support worker or respite services, we use a form which is called the ARF, as we abbreviate everything in state services, and that's the accessing resources form. There's a family grant request form that our staff have access to that they would complete that document with you over the phone. And if you're looking for an enhancement to current funds and you're on one of our waiver programs, there is the Pratt request. And I believe one of the other presenters mentioned what Pratt was. So there's various different documents that would be required depending on what pathway, what service you're looking for, and how are we going to look to have it funded. Your case manager or the helpline staff would be that point of contact to help navigate that conversation and ensure the required documents are completed. Excuse me. Now, we have an increased need for individuals who do have residential funding and to access our respite centers. So we do have a threshold internally that folks who do have residential dollars assigned to them from DDS for residential supports, if they exceed that threshold, there's an additional administrative review through the Individual and Family Support Assistant Regional Director for the region. We review each of those circumstances to ensure that the team has really looked at every single possibility out there for the in-home or out-of-home respite, for weekend coverage, et cetera, looking at self-direction as an option, looking at provider network options and other community options before we entertain approving a stay at one of our respite centers. We really try to focus in on supporting individuals who don't have those assigned resources as our priority, but we do recognize that over the span of the past several years with COVID, that finding some of those resources has become a little bit more complicated for families and individuals. Next slide, please. So our respite centers are designed to provide 24-hour care for extended weekends in home-like environments, as I mentioned before. There is one exception to that. Most of them, we have 11 that operate on a Thursday through Monday schedule, and we have one that operates 24/7. And that one that operates 24/7 also has a complement of nursing, which is on 3 shifts. So 24 hours a day, we do have nursing. That location is the one in Meriden. As I mentioned, they are all operated and staffed by DDS. They are all go through a number of trainings around supporting individuals with developmental disabilities, including medical training, med certification. We look at behavioral support plans of people coming in, general behavioral modification training, all the way through daily living skill training, et cetera. You must be eligible to access any of these types of respite services. You must be eligible for DDS services. So one of the key pieces, especially with younger families, is getting through that eligibility process and becoming eligible. And this opens the gateway to accessing our respite centers, family grants, and other services like our family support workers. So that's one critical piece we do often in the family support work or family support division, get calls from folks who are not yet eligible for DDS services and looking for respite. And unfortunately, our hands do come a little tied with that. So we help assist with that eligibility application conversation and provide guidance in that area. As I mentioned before, priority is given to families who are not currently getting funding for in-home supports or residential type supports. But we have authorized folks to stay in our respite centers who do have those financial resources because of individualized case circumstances. We do try to accommodate every individual at least twice a year. Some families do get more stays. Some of the centers do maintain what we call a cancellation list. So if there is a cancellation this weekend and the grouping, they look at the grouping for this particular weekend coming up, and they will see who's on the cancellation list that would match from age group, functioning level, need level, etc., and start making phone calls to those families. So if you do access our respite centers, ask them if they do have that cancellation list that your family member or loved one that can be put on there for future consideration of additional stays. But again, we do try to target at least twice a year. Again, some have hit 3, some have hit 4 times, and it's all a matter of particular circumstances or luck of the draw if there was cancellations and it worked into that family and individual schedule as well. A couple things I just want to also talk about. Next slide, please. Our scheduling, again, based on availability, space, peer groupings for a particular weekend. 18 is kind of like the line in the sand, okay? We start looking at all the referrals under age 18, start playing the matchmaker of who's going to be complementary groupings for a particular weekend for all the under 18s. And then we look at the 18 and over group and start playing matchmaker and looking at how are we going to have a really complementary group in each of the centers for different weekends. So there's a lot of thought process that goes into this from all of our supervisory staff as well as the respite center staff to make sure that the weekends are very successful for everybody who will be coming in. From any additional needs for behavior management, any additional needs for medical care, or just accommodations for individuals who might have more physical limitations or any other disability related needs. We try to be as planful with that grouping process as possible. We do try to accommodate family plans around scheduling. So if there is, when you're talking to your case manager or the helpline staff, if there is a particular weekend that you are targeting, that you have a family event going on, a celebration of some kind, and maybe bringing your loved one with you to that event would be traumatic for them, and you're looking for one of our respite centers to support them in your absence, please make sure you communicate that to the case manager or the helpline staff that you're looking for a particular weekend. They'll put that in the request, and our staff will make every effort to honor that request. If we cannot do it in your home respite center, the one closest to you or the one that you historically go to, we will look at all the other ones in the region that you reside in to see if your loved one can be accommodated somewhere else in the region for that weekend. There is no charge. All we ask for is about $70, $75 for personal spending money. And what does that personal spending money go to? Well, every weekend activities happen. They're very engaged in their communities. And when Thursdays roll around and we're having our admissions come in, or Fridays if somebody's coming in on Friday, there's conversations between our staff and the guests coming in at our respite centers, and you start planning out the weekend of the activities, whether it be going to the movies or going out to lunch or going out to dinner, going to a local fair or carnival, whatever it might be. We really sit down, speak with the individuals and or the family if they need the voice from the parent to look at what type of activities the individual would enjoy, want to participate in over the weekend. Those personal expenses associated with those activities would be part of using those dollars that come in from the family. We'll maintain the receipts and provide those as well as your change back to you after the weekend stay. All the other costs around our staffing, the meals, any transportation that goes on while on the weekend is all built into our agency budget. Next slide, please. Okay, so what to expect? As I mentioned, have fun through planned recreation and community activities. They're on the go. I think the only time that they're really not on the go is third shift or on a weekend where there might be miserable weather conditions and where there might be more home-based or more local indoor type activities. But otherwise, our staff are very eager to get out and get going and be really engaged in community-based and recreation type activities. Learn and enhance skills. This is an opportunity for any of our guests to start building or enhancing skill sets they already have, whether it be assisting with cooking, assisting with setting the table or cleaning up dishes after meals, whether it be helping clean if they have an interest in cleaning, whatever it might be. There's a lot of opportunity for our staff to engage with your loved one and start looking at different skill sets and really incorporating them into the process of staying at our respite centers and doing a lot of hand over hand type of education and teaching. We heard assistive technology used a couple times through several of these presentations. Each of our respite centers have a slew of technology built into them. I think all of them but one right now I think is coming in is we have these very large tablet devices called the Yetis. These are amazing pieces of technology that allow for individuals to work on them solo or in a group aspect. They can be like wall-mounted style, or they can be turned tabletop, and our guests can play, one-on-one or as a group of 4 playing games on that and interacting off of that software and technology. A lot of our respite centers have Ring doorbells, Ring cameras. I gotta say it a little quietly, Alexa devices, otherwise mine will go off. Those are incorporated into our respite centers. We have smart technology with lighting. We have smart technology with small appliances and large appliances. And a lot of that is to work through and enhance the experience of the individual in our respite centers and really build a lot of that independence. Decrease the reliance on staffing, but through using a lot of that smart technology and smart appliances. The biggest thing is building relationships. It affords an opportunity for our guests to really start building friendships, whether those friendships come into the respite center, because we have a lot of folks who talk with their friend network and try to book similar weekends, and it's a nice weekend getaway for the guys or for the gals, or they develop relationships while they're at our respite centers. Whether it be developing with peers through community inclusion activities, whether it be in the local community by which one of the respite centers is located, and they start building relationships there, or building relationships with staff. And that affords the opportunity for our guests to experience being cared for by somebody other than their immediate caregivers or family members. A couple quick things about our respite centers. Yes, they are home-like settings. We do have 2 that are on regional center campuses, which tend to be a more single-story setups, where it affords a lot more of the medical style care. But most are in localized communities and homes. They do have shared bedrooms. There's very few respite centers that we operate that have single bedrooms, but if there is a need for a single bedroom, please make sure our staff are made aware of that. Okay, but otherwise there would be a shared bedroom situation. Our respite centers are an opportunity to grow, an opportunity to have fun, an opportunity to build relationships and enhance those skills. There's so many positive experiences. If you probably have somebody that that you can tap into and talk about their positive experience in respite. The first step is DDS eligibility, followed by starting that process with your helpline case manager or your case manager about doing the referral for a pre-visit stay. Start the engagement with us and experience it. You can do a day trip. You don't have to do an overnight your first go around. Get put your toes in the water, get a feel for what respite centers are all about, and expand upon that. Next slide, please. We often get questions about where are these located. If you're in the North region, we have centers in Newington, Putnam, Storrs, and Windsor. If you're in the South, Meriden, which I mentioned is a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week operation, Middletown, New Haven, and Waterford. And in the West region, we have Norwalk, Southbury, Torrington, and Trumbull. Now you'll see it down there on the bottom. If your family is a member of our behavioral support program or our BSP program, we do have a specifically specialized respite center for youth who are being supported through our BSP program, and that's located in Enfield. So if you do, speak to your case manager if you're a part of the BSP program, and he or she will be help give you some information about that and start scheduling an opportunity for you to experience respite at that specialized location. And there's other links up there about respite in our respite family brochure as well. I believe that's my last slide, and I see Deputy Commissioner Velardo coming on. So I thank you all for your time, and I hope I answered a lot of those questions about our respite center services and respite through family grants and other funding. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brian. Yeah, you gave a great overview on respite, and I love how you started that. Respite really is respite for everybody. It's a mini vacation and an opportunity for the care provider to get time for some self-care, and the excitement when people are getting ready for a respite visit is really fun to see. So thank you. And now I'd like to, next slide, please, introduce Edie Pagoni. Edie, are you there? I know that Edie's on the call. I don't know if you're having some technical difficulties. Edie was going to share her experience in utilizing some of these services. Are you able to join us? All right, then I think Gunnar will go right into the poll, and then we'll start with question and answer. If you could just take a moment and answer these questions.
Deputy Commissioner, I don't know if you can see the chat.
Yeah, Edie, if we can hear you now, we'd be happy to hear your story. Go ahead.
Edie, are you there?
Oh, she says she's ready to speak, but we're still not getting audio. So, Edie, we're going to invite you back. We'll do some practicing with technology, and we'll have more of these forums late summer, early fall. And we'll invite you back as a guest then and take the time to field test and do a trial run with you to make sure your equipment's working and our equipment's working with yours. So I apologize we couldn't get an opportunity for you to share your story, but we'll move to questions and answers now and invite Edie back at a later date.
All right, Commissioner and Deputy Commissioner, I'll move into the chat here. Our first question comes from Kelly Lindsay. Kelly wants to know what kind of financial and non-financial support would a sibling or other family member have access to if they become a CCH home?
Dave, do you want to take that?
Sure. So in a CCH, the licensee, as far as compensation goes, they receive $500 a month in a rent payment, and that comes from the individual they are supporting. Generally, the CCH licensee becomes a representative payee for the individual's Social Security benefits. And so from that benefit, they would keep $500 a month as far as rental payment. And then based on the individual's level of need score, they would also get a monthly payment from DDS, and that's called their difficulty of care payment. Now, the rental payment that they would get is considered reportable, potentially taxable income, while the difficulty of care payment they get from the state is considered not reportable, not taxable. I hope that answers the question.
Thanks, Dave.
Dave, I do have a couple other questions here
Sure.
from Kelly related to CCH. The first being, can an extended family member who is a conservator of person become CCH licensed?
So the rules have changed in recent years. It will allow family members to potentially become licensed. I can't give a blanket statement that they could, because we evaluate each family situation on a case-by-case basis. One thing though that would have to happen in those instances in which a family member does become the licensed CCH provider, they do need to relinquish either guardianship or the conservatorship over the individual, and have an outside entity or outside person appointed as either guardian or conservator.
Thank you. And I wanted to mention in some of the questions, I see that there are specific questions about your situation or a question about your loved one. We may follow up after this forum. And so if there are questions about a particular circumstance, we'll reach out after the forum and connect you with the right person to have a more specific conversation.
And we're getting some questions about the payment structures, and rather than go through each of them individually, I'm wondering if one of my staff can put the rate link to CCH in the chat, and then we can follow up with what that payment chart looks like by email for everyone who attended today. But it is somewhere on our website, and it's different for us internally than you externally, so I'm not even going to hazard a guess at the moment where you'd click, but we will get you that link in the chat. And the payments vary. One of the things that we're looking at in terms of proposals during supporting transformation to empower people is, are there ways that perhaps we can enhance the CCH program? We think that it's undervalued and underutilized. One of the challenges, although I think that we're hoping to see proposals around, is relief staff or other types of supports that could be provided as well. We're looking at whether using dollars to make a licensee's home more accessible, whether we can incorporate technology into those CCH environments to promote even further independence and integration. So we're very interested in talking more about it, and I don't want to shortchange that discussion today, but the CCHs are a focal point for this transformation process. So when you review that information, if you have thoughts, questions, ideas, or concerns, please share them. We want to make sure that that feedback gets included in wherever we land at the end of this spending.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. We do have one final follow-up to that question related to CCH. Kelly wants to know, does DDS assist the potential CCH owner to obtain wheelchair vehicles if individuals require one?
So if you watch all of these, you'll hear me say this at least once per presentation. We start figuring out what the person's life needs are, and then we build a plan for them around that, and then we look to see where we can attribute funding. So the answer is a very firm maybe. Depending on the circumstances, depending on the waiver definitions, there are some things that we can do, and there are some exceptions we have made for not purchase a vehicle, but the modification to the vehicle may be treated separately. So we would want to have an individual conversation with that team around the individual and figure out what that could or may not look like. But I think it's within the realm of possibility in the current work that we're doing, and we should definitely talk more. We have found that one of the reasons we think CCHs are underutilized are issues primarily around some medical issues and some physical issues and accessibility issues. Those are barriers we're trying to overcome. The outcomes for individuals who participate in that program, and as our ombudsperson Shannon Giacovino mentioned, we have some outstanding outcomes for people who have lived in other environments and really preferred the CCH. We also know that for some people, it's a great training ground for independent living later. That perhaps at the moment people are concerned about 24/7 supports, but that by learning to use technology, by gaining some independence from family, and I speak from the heart when I say that, learned dependence is a real thing, and we battle that at my house a little bit. But there are opportunities for growth for that individual, and so sometimes it's not it can be a transitional opportunity towards other residential environments. One of the questions that came up in prior forums is, if once you agree to one living situation, are you foregoing all other situations? We do a lot of transition at DDS for individuals with intellectual disability. There used to be a notion that we talked about in the industry of forever homes, and I've really tried to stay away from that. People may need to transition from a group home to something more independent and find their way back to a group home later in life, or vice versa. So there's a lot of different opportunities there, and we should consider all of them when we're talking about finding that type of placement.
All right, next in the chat, we have a question regarding supportive housing availability within the state. It comes from Michael Beloff. Michael wants to know, he says, unfortunately, it does not seem that affordable housing units are spread out around the state. It is clustered in the Hartford area. How do we spread this out, including in Fairfield County?
Hey, Josh, can you come on and talk a little bit about where we're at and where we're headed and what we're trying to do?
Absolutely, Commissioner. Thank you. I'm going to just briefly read the towns that we have developments in. These are the first three that we got: Canton, Hartford, and Bloomfield. I will say the Hartford one was not a typical new housing development, because it was historic preservation housing development in Cottage Gardens, which involved a nonprofit entity supporting the purchase of several adjacent properties and then having multiple years of getting approval for that zoning, and a very unique project, but not a typical Hartford housing development project, which yields a lot of large new units, very unique. And beyond that, then the next development we had was the one that Michael Menard talked about in Torrington. That was our first tax credit development that opened up, and then we've had our second tax credit development open up in West Hartford with CRI as the provider. There's a project underway in New London and one underway in Orange. There is one that was awarded in Farmington, one awarded in Hartford, one awarded in New Haven, and one awarded in New Britain. None of those last four have broken ground yet. And that is where we are. That is where we are with the current projects. Now, earlier I said that we have started talking with Department of Housing about ways that we could incentivize development in certain areas of the state. So first of all, what people should know is this doesn't start with DDS saying we have a need in this area. This starts with the people that are asking for tax credits from the state of Connecticut for developments that they have underway. And they've spent a good amount of time preparing for their submission. And in general, they've invested a huge amount of time, energy, effort, and probably funding to get their proposal ready. And we've become attached to that later on down the line, after they've already started thinking about building this development, and now they're seeking funding. So one thing that Department of Housing has talked with us about is perhaps in future development rounds, we could put out a notice of funding availability saying that DDS would commit resources, including rental assistance, to developments in these specific geographic areas. So that's something that we're starting to explore in terms of implementing that with the Department of Housing. And we would use our own housing opportunities map, where we would be looking at where are those places that are really high need for us as an organization, and then trying to drive the partnerships to happen in those specific areas. I hope that that was responsive. It's not like we've said, it's not a perfect system yet, but we're working with the existing system to try to shape it to our needs, and our partners at Department of Housing are very supportive of that.
So, thanks, Josh. And I appreciate the response. I do know that the governor is very interested in creating affordable housing in communities that have traditionally not had affordable housing, including the area of the state where he lives. He knows that there's a shortage of living opportunities there. And so for a variety of reasons, not just for people with intellectual disability, he's very invested in housing stability and making housing affordable for all. So I think that in time that'll happen. There are, the one thing I would share with you is there are ordinances by municipality that determine or dictate what type of affordable housing, if any, is available within their town. So at that level, the politics is all local. If you're interested in a specific area of the state, you may want to look at your local, and look at that town's rules and roles around affordable housing, because if you want to see something there, it may be that the advocacy to have those local laws changed in that town may need to happen. In the meantime, we're going to try and proliferate this type of housing so it's available in many, many places. I will note that one of at times the scoring methodology to determine who gets these awards and what locations we may use does look at things such as public transportation and access to economic opportunity in terms of jobs. So they're not likely to find themselves in particularly rural communities, but they may. But that is one of the scoring methodology, and the rationale is to be able to promote independence and not staff reliance in terms of getting where you're going. For some people, we do have people with higher levels of need who will be living in these supportive housing structures who will always rely on, or will often rely on, transportation from paid professionals and not public transit, and for a variety of reasons. So we know it's not a blanket all. What else we have? I hope that was responsive. And Gunnar, you want to keep going?
Absolutely. Our next question comes from one of our case management supervisors in the South region, Kathy Varanow. Kathy wants to know, how does supportive housing affect portability of funding? Is it available for people choosing to self-direct services?
Yes, and portability, it doesn't affect portability. If you move in there and you want to move somewhere else, you have portability available to you. If you're living somewhere else and you want to move to supportive housing, portability is a tool to do that. That was the first part of the question. The second part of the question was what, Gunnar?
Is it available?
Is self-determination or IHS type? You could, and Josh, correct me if I'm wrong, or any of the other folks on the call who are supporting these programs. You could self-direct services within those affordable housing units, correct?
Yeah, I'm sure that would be possible. We haven't seen that yet, and it's really a service that people have gotten that's been a partnership between the things that we're talking about, supportive housing, and the project-based supportive housing is around the integrating the relationship with the developer and the provider designing a sort of approach to overseeing and providing supports and integrating technology that works in a cohesive way to create what we might consider like a safety net for individuals who are living in that type of a setting. So how someone could self-direct their direct supporting staff and also be part of that safety net, I think is something that could be remains to be determined, because we haven't seen that happen yet. It's a new model for us, just a few years old, but certainly that could be accommodated, and anyone can self-direct in-home supports in any setting, and there we wouldn't not give people the opportunity to participate because of that.
Thanks, Josh.
All right. Next question comes from Jesus Pagan. Jesus wants to know, can individuals or families use IHS hours contracted with a provider to also self-direct if the provider cannot provide staffing on a particular day?
Are any of my self-determination directors on the call? If not, Brian, are you in a space to answer that? If not, we'll have to get back to the person. I don't want to dive too deep down into it.
It would be a team decision. You may have to access portability to pull it out of the contract and put it into an IP6 budget and then build service lines for the contracted service through the provider and then separate service lines for the self-directed support. So it'd just be a conversation with your supervisor and, well, more so starting with the team. Why can't they provide it? What's their estimated time frame to provide that service? And then if they can't give that and the person's in need of the service, then a discussion about pulling the funds off contract and into an IP6 where you can manipulate and have two different service lines, one for the provider and one for a self-directed model. So,
All right. Thanks. And I think that
You're
that
welcome.
is possible. There's a level of management to that, both for the individual and us, you know, as the year progresses, moving money between authorization lines. But that's stuff that sounds technical. It's not particularly hard, just means we have to be in good communication with you.
All right, looking through the chat for a few more questions here, Commissioner. We do have another question from Kathy. Kathy says, if I lived in a supported apartment I enjoy but would prefer a different provider, would I have to leave the supported housing apartment?
I think that's a conversation worth exploring. I think the basic answer is that no, you wouldn't have to. There may be certain units within the structure that are dedicated to a specific provider, and we try and cap the number of individuals with developmental disability by a percentage of total everyone living there. But I could imagine scenarios where, you know, the Jordan Sheff Corporation has got 3 units with 7 people living in them, and you know, in the building, and there's other spaces open in the building, and someone wants a different company than mine to provide their supports. I can see that happening. Our providers are pretty collaborative and would be willing to partner around that and appreciate individual choice. It may make it a little more complicated in terms of some of the communal activities. You know, when you watch the folks at FAVAR have a community, I'm going to describe it poorly and Steve's not on, a community room in one of their buildings that is not only shared by the individuals that they support, but by other people living in the building. And so there's a lot of communal sort of sharing of resources. It's one of the beauties of it, is that you bring together a diverse group of people into a setting and build relationships, and that's really one of the fundamentals that we're so fond of. So I think the answer is yes, but worth discussing further.
All right, we have another question from Kelly Lindsay. Kelly says, my niece lives in a group home and wants a break from it. Can she apply to a respite center? She is total care with higher cognitive functioning.
So typically people with a large annualized authorization and access to 24/7 supports don't respite like for a weekend there, but there are other opportunities that are supported, like our camperships at a variety of the privately run camps. So we have to sit down with Lindsay and her team. I'm sorry, that means I may have the wrong name, and figure that out, what she might need in terms of a break. I'm not sure how long a respite you're talking about, but that's worth talking about at the team level.
All right, we do have one final question in the chat, Commissioner. It comes from our self-advocate coordinator in the South Region, Carol Grabby. Carol wants to know, she says, I didn't realize there was a matching process. Could you please explain this in more detail? She's referring to the CCH program.
Sure.
And I think, Carol, you might have noted that in the chat before Dave got to that point in his presentation, but Dave, if you want to come on and just talk a little bit about what you look for in the matching process.
Certainly. So as we're licensing an individual, we learn about them and their family and the type of person they would like to share their home with. They can be real specific. They can say that they want to open their home to a male or a female, older or younger, somebody that may require total care, that type of thing. Then once they're licensed, then as we get referrals in, we kind of keep a running list of, you know, here's the traits that a licensee would like to have. And then depending on the referral packet we get, you know, we'll send the referral packet out to the licensee. We really push licensees that have vacancies to don't just look at the paper. I mean, because that's not really who the person is. That's what the paperwork is. We really encourage everybody to, set up a meet and greet, take the time to get to know one another. And again, decisions aren't made as far as, placement, aren't made, quickly. It really does. We ask that people, invest the time to get to know one another.
Is it based on the individual's interest to go into a CCH?
If an individual wants to pursue CCH, they should talk to their current case manager and discuss it with the team and see the team. But yes, we're open to assisting anybody.
For the matching process, I mean, when you're matching up somebody, is it based around the individual's interests? That's what I was trying to say.
Yes, that's part of it. So we look at trying to make sure that it's compatible between both the licensees, what they're looking for, and as well as what the individual would like. So as we develop a home study for the licensee, we would also get to know the person too, to find out what type of home would they like to live in that would be different from their current residential setting.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, and Carol, you may want to consider inviting our friends from the CCH programs within the state to a SAC meeting, because if you're asking questions like that, I'm sure the other self-advocate coordinators might have the same questions.
Oh, Commissioner, I just didn't realize that there was a matching process for a CCH.
Yeah, well, I think it would be good for everyone to hear more about that. So we'll work on setting that up, but I really appreciate you asking the question, and it's good to see you.
Good to see you too.
All right, Commissioner, that does it for the chat. I'll turn it back over to you.
I saw one last question. I'm just gonna so the question, and I think we need to answer that question, the last question from, and I'm like, close the chat screen and forget the name, from Kelly Lindsay. I was saying Lindsay earlier. Kelly, that's the answer is all things are possible. One of the, and I'll say this in closing, one of our moms who was frustrated for many years navigating in getting appropriate supports and services for their child came to me to complain one day. And while I told her I couldn't fix her immediate situation, I really see my job as a commissioner here as providing hope. And then all the staff and other people on the call who've presented at these and other calls, it's their job to help make that hope turn into a reality. And we are working very hard to create a system that will allow for that flexibility, a broad continuum of supports. So if it isn't happening yet, that doesn't mean it won't happen going forward. With enough advocacy and enough energy and enough creativity, I think we could get there. I will tell you just a quick story. I got 3 minutes before my next meeting. I had the great benefit of working for a woman named Ruth Mercer Sankowitz, who wrote the book, I Raised My Eyes to Say Yes. And I won't get into her whole life story, but she and her husband, Norman, she had no outward communication verbally the way that I do. She communicated through blinking her eyes and some other technology, and she hated the high tech. But she and her husband, Norman, both utilized wheelchairs to get around. They picked and hired their own staff to live in their own house and were able to be supported adequately despite their physical limitations and some of their communication limitations. This was up in Northampton. Ruth and Norman have both since passed away, but I learned a lot by having the opportunity to support them and to walk their journey a little for a small portion of what was an extraordinary story. So I do believe that there are a lot of things that are possible that may not seem readily possible to all, but with enough dedication and enough input, we can look to make more things happen than we're making now. And hopefully today's conversation gave you all a little hope that what you're looking for your loved one can be a reality someday, and maybe someday soon. So thank you all for taking time. These conversations are so vital. Spread the word if you know other. A lot of times our parents are well networked. These videos are online. Supporting transformation to empower people isn't going away. We're going to take a little break in June and July, but we'll be back in the late summer, early fall for another round of similar conversations and updates on progress we've made. Always start with your case manager, and if you have any additional questions, but we'll be responsive to any email we get regarding this from top to bottom. So thanks again for joining us, folks. I hope you have a lovely 3-day weekend, and look forward to your continued partnership.